First of all, congratulations on your reasonably successful film.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. So you're a producer on the movie as well. How did you know a Barbie movie would connect with audiences in the manner that it did? Or did you know?
Yeah, it's like 90% of me was certain that this would be a big deal and a massive hit. And then like 10% of me thought, no, this could go so badly wrong. But I went after Greta Gerwig from the beginning to direct and hopefully write as well. And then she invited Noah to write with her without really even consulting him. But it meant we got two brilliant brains on the project. And it really came down to her saying yes to this. I had no doubt that this was going to work as soon as she said yes.
And she was always your first choice then?
First choice.
Okay.
I just wasn't going to let her say no. I had met her before because I've wanted to work with her for a while. You know, it was a pretty long process. It was about 6 years ago. We got the property. First we had to, it was set up at Sony. We got it out of Sony, set it up at Warner Brothers, got Mattel's blessing to let us produce, then went after Greta.
Okay.
And then it was like the writing process. And yeah, obviously I didn't know it was going to have the kind of be the cultural phenomenon that it ended up being.
When did you realize that that was what it was going to be?
I knew there'd be big reactions to, I could say, it was all the way along, I was like, okay, I think people are picking up that we're trying to do something interesting here. You know, the fact that it's Greta Gerwig, people were like, Greta Gerwig in a Barbie movie, what? And so that was the right reaction. That's what I was hoping for. And then, the pictures of Ryan and I rollerblading on Venice Beach came out and like went even wider than I was expecting that. I was like, oh, people are going to notice, of course, but it went kind of crazy. And it was starting to occur that, oh, this might even be bigger than I'm even thinking. And I believe in this more than anyone. So
of course.
I'd been thinking big for it, and it still turned out bigger than I expected.
Hey, Barbie.
Yeah.
Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
In terms of this sort of the version of the film and the adaptation or the idea of it, were Mattel cool with that from the beginning? Did you have any kind of pushback with how kind of radical you were trying to make? Or
yeah. Mattel were amazing to let us do this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a character in the film.
Yes.
Which I don't think they were expecting at all. But they had no idea until the script was done. So Greta and Noah's process is to go away and not let anyone see the script.
Okay, even you?
Until they're totally finished. No, even me. We would kind of because it was COVID, so they were writing it during COVID. We would do, talk over Zoom and check in and be like, how you guys going? And it was so fun because you could watch Greta and Noah they're like, oh, we're working on this idea. So they'd tell us, working on this idea. And then they kind of when you talk to a comedian, you can tell sometimes they're testing bits on you. They kind of test bits with each other. And we would just sit and, Tom and I would just sit and watch them and be like, yeah. Because Ken's probably, Ken would probably be like, and say something. And then she'd jump in and be like, yeah, it's kind of and then before you know it, they're kind of writing a scene, but verbally and in front of you. And it's a fascinating process. And they write chronologically, so they don't map something out and then write it, which a lot of writers obviously do, but they write themselves into corners and write themselves out of corners.
Yeah, like we used to do as kids, just write the story and then...
and let it unfold. And I think because of that, the story has a quality of, you not getting too far ahead of it, because they didn't know where it was going to end up, really. So it was fascinating to kind of watch their process. And I think the movie is so, amazing and original because of that process. But then, came the day where the script was in our inbox and Tom and I sat down on the couch to read it. And even on page 1, I was just like, oh, wow, okay. It's going to be hard to convince them to let us to do this, but I'm loving it. It started with a Kubrick reference, completely redoing 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this is what Mattel had in mind. And then by the end of the script, I was just like, wow, they're never going to let us make this. It's such a shame that this brilliant piece of writing will never see the light of day because they're never going to let us make this. And they did, thank God, and a massive credit to them. But it was a lot of conversations about getting them comfortable with being very, very, very uncomfortable.
So they had a sense of humor.
They did. And you know, Mattel, they're a toy company and they haven't made a movie before. So
Yeah.
there was also like a educational process of like, oh, okay, this is what you're reading on the page. It took a second for me to realize that some of their concerns could be assuaged just by explaining the process of the
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
You know, for some things they're like, but Barbie's saying this. And I'd be like, okay, but this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then I'd say it and they're like, oh. And I'm like, see how my face is telling you that I don't think that. But
Okay.
the words are saying that.
Yeah.
But that's subtext. And there's subtext all through that, you know. So, and they'll be like, oh, okay. So they're, and then still there's some jokes where they're just like, do we have to use the word fascist? Do we need that bit where Mattel employee gets shot? Do they have to be shot? You know, we're like, yeah. So there were certain jokes, and I was so prepared to like fight for certain jokes, and then like, you know, to explain like, no, we have to have that joke because it this and this and this, and some of them they're just like we're fine with, and then other jokes I didn't think they'd have a problem with, you know, but it was never a case of, oh, they didn't like that, so let's cut it. It was no, we need to explain why we think that should be in there and get everyone, like I said, comfortable with being uncomfortable. Did you think so many people were gonna watch a movie about the making of the atomic bomb?
No. Christopher Nolan was always determined that it would be released in the summer as a big tentpole movie. That was always his plan, and he has this kind of superstition around that date, the
Do all his
21st,
movies come out on that date?
in and around the 21st of July, or it could be always the 21st. So they always come out then.
I mean, it's a good date.
It's a good day. It
We
is
picked that
now.
date too.
Yeah, I know.
I remember one of the producers, Chuck
Yeah.
Groven, called me because we worked together on some other projects.
Okay.
And he was like, I think you guys should move your date. And I was like, we're not moving our date. If you're scared to be up against us, then you move your date. And he's like, we're not moving our date. I just think it'd be better for you to move. And I was like, we're not moving. I think this is a really great pairing, actually. I think it's like,
Well,
it's a perfect double billing, Oppenheimer and Barbie.
that was a good instinct.
Clearly the world agreed.
Yeah,
Thank
they
God.
did. But I think that both of these films show the appetite that the audience has
Yeah.
for cinema.
I'm always like, you know, everyone talks about the algorithm. I'm like,
Yeah.
how on earth is an algorithm tracking me? Because I have such an eclectic taste. If you look, you'd be like, wow, she's going from, you know, that black and white film from the 20s to Love Island. So
Yeah.
like, what box do I put her in?
Yeah.
Same thing. But the fact that people were going and being like, I'll watch Oppenheimer first, then Barbie. I was like, see,
Yeah.
you don't, people like everything. People are weird. People have
Yeah.
specific and wide-ranging tastes.
And they don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
Audiences don't like being told you should see this or you should see that. They will decide and they will generate the interest themselves. And I think what happened with both of our movies was a case in point of that the audience decided,
Mm.
you know, that this was correct and this was right.
I think they were also really excited by the filmmakers.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think
People
you're
are
right.
like itching for the next Chris Nolan film and itching for the next Greta Gerwig film.
Yes.
To get them at the same time was, you know, exciting.
Quantum mechanics says it's both. How can it be both?
It can't.
It can't. But it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works.
Because I'm a fan of yours, I have watched a lot of your things on the internet, on YouTube. And there's kind of like, it's out there on the internet that you're not that aware of memes and things like that. First of all, is that true? And second of all, if that is true, were you even aware of the Barbenheimer like phenomenon, or were you just blissfully unaware because you use a dial-up phone or something?
No, I have teenage boys. I have 2 teenage boys, so
So they
they keep doing this. So, and I do know what a meme is. Now I know that there are memes about me not knowing what a meme is.
It's a great meme.
But
It's like inception of memes, a meme within a meme.
it is. I genuinely, at the time, did not know. But people forget that was.
A while ago.
It was a long time
Yeah, a
ago.
long time ago. Yeah.
You know.
I might not have known back then what a meme is.
No, and I mean
I'm not that tech savvy.
exactly, and I think children started that stuff, right? So.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as, but now that it's become this sort of like meme that's eating itself, I am aware, but it's mostly because of people either sending it to me or showing, saying, "Look, you got to look at this."
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think that,
Did you see any of the Barbenheimer?
I mean, it was
fan art?
impossible to
Wasn't there some great ones?
avoid any of that stuff. which is
people are so clever with the things they come up
it was incredible, and it was self-generated. You know what I mean?
I know. People
Um,
kept asking me, they're like, so the studio's talking, each marketing department's talking to each other. And I was like, no, this is the world doing this.
the world.
This is not a part of the marketing campaign. This is just happening.
And I think it happened because like both movies were good.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the thing. And there was a sort of a diversity offered by both
yeah.
movies. In fact, that summer there was a huge diversity of stuff in the cinema, and like I think it just connected in a way that you or I or the studios or anybody could never have predicted. We could never
You can't force
have
that.
predicted.
You
No,
can't orchestrate that.
no.
Just
And it may never happen again.
I know.
You know, it was,
I mean, it was wild seeing that many people going to the movies.
yeah.
Wild. Did you go to the movie?
Did you go to see Oppenheimer or did you go to see Barbie?
Do you sneak out and see like what the vibe is? I mean, we were going around the cinemas checking like levels and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're a producer and you got to do that. I try to avoid looking at myself. I struggle with it.
But isn't the mask the best thing?
The what?
Now
Oh, yes.
I wear a mask everywhere.
Yes,
And I
that
can go
is.
everywhere again. It's so
But
good.
I wouldn't volunteer to go and to see myself.
No.
But I do know that Chris and Emma, Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas, his wife, producer, I think they were sneaking into
Checking how it's.
Yeah, but then like the fact that people were going dressed up as Barbie or dressed up as Oppenheimer to go and see the movies multiple times, it's kind of so flattering and kind of overwhelming and so great for cinema.
Totally.
Yeah, like being the producer and being the star of the movie. How did you manage to kind of, I guess, split those responsibilities, or was that difficult? Were you always going to play Barbie?
I wasn't always going to, not necessarily. Even when we got the property and sat with Mattel, I said, they were like, will you play Barbie?
Yeah.
And I said, no, that's up to the filmmaker. So it's, I want to go after Greta Gerwig and she should cast whoever she wants. And
Yeah.
if that's not me, like, that's okay. And I said that to Greta as well. It's like, you write the script that you want to write. You and Noah write it. And if you think I'm the right actor for it, great. And if you don't, like, let's go get the best actor for it. Like,
Cool.
I didn't mind. I really wanted to produce this. I really wanted to make this. It wasn't until I read the script that I was like, oh, I have to play it.
Yeah.
And she'd written it like Barbie Margo. So
Right,
she made
okay.
it pretty clear, like, no, I want you to play this role. But you've done 5 movies with Christopher Nolan now.
This
right?
is 6, actually.
6? Really?
Yeah.
So you like the guy? Big fan.
It seems to work. I mean, this is the first time playing a proper lead role for him. They'd always been
Yeah.
supporting parts over the years. It's 20 years we're working together.
Has your relationship changed or evolved in that time?
I mean, I think that it's probably gotten, richer. I think, I was certainly just kind of starting off back then, or starting to work properly in film, and he had just made the leap from making independent films into making big studio movies, and he was taking over this franchise for the first time with Batman Begins, and obviously just nailed it. But I think he's refining his kind of vision and how the types of stories he wants to tell and how he wants to present them. Like moving into IMAX, and he was the first
When
director
did he
to
start
do that.
shooting always in the large format?
I think it was Dark Knight, where I think that opening sequence at the beginning, I think that's in IMAX. You remember when Heath breaks into the bank and all that? I think that's in IMAX. I think that's I could be wrong, but I think that's one of the first times that he started using it. But like in Oppenheimer, we were using it almost all of the time.
Yeah.
And they come at you, it's like
It's a film. I mean, those cameras must be so heavy,
yeah.
so loud.
So loud, so heavy. Have you worked with him with IMAX?
No.
It's
But I know he shoots on IMAX and always on film. So
Yeah.
I imagine, like, to get more than a 4-minute take, those mags must be massive.
they're huge. And our amazing DP,
Wait,
Hoysa, was like, carries him everywhere. Like, I remember in Dunkirk, we'd be like on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and Hoyt would have the thing on his shoulder, and it's like these beautifully composed shots. But to answer your question, I don't know. I suppose as you get older, you just get a bit more confident in this sort of stories you want to tell. And I suppose I've learned a huge amount from working with Chris in terms of focus and rigor and dedication. I think we have similar tastes, and I think he may have, helped form my my tastes. But before I even worked with him, the movies that he had made prior to Batman Begins, I was a fan of, and I really just wanted to, meet him. And that happens a lot, isn't it? Like you're fans of directors, and then you get to meet them, and next thing you're working with them, and it's kind of nuts because you were at home watching their movies when you were a kid.
I don't know if it happens a lot, but when it does happen, it's like magic.
This is true.
Amazing.
I'm sure that's happened to you.
It has. I've like reached out to people I really want to work with.
Yeah, I've done that. Written letters.
And the letter thing does work, I have to say.
It does.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does.
People appreciate a handwritten letter that you sat down to write. I believe in that.
Yeah. I feel like I don't like playing lead roles because I feel like you have more responsibility, and like as a supporting role, you can kind of be a little more like wild and I don't know, like I avoid playing lead roles.
Really?
I haven't done it that much. Not where like my character's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Only I, Tonya, have I done that really. Did you feel that sense of like, oh, I have to carry the weight of this story because I am playing Oppenheimer and the movie is Oppenheimer? Or did you approach it, did it feel just the same as when you've worked with him in other instances?
No, it did feel different. Like he called me up out of the blue because he's never, like I didn't even know he's writing it. So he called me up out of the blue, or Emma Thomas, his wife, the producer, she called me because Chris doesn't have a phone. So she put me on to Chris, and he said in his, very understated British way, I'm just making this movie, I'm Oppenheimer, I'd like to play the part. And so it was like, wham, out of nowhere. Luckily, I was unemployed at the time. I just finished something. I wasn't doing anything. But I did realize then that it was different to the other jobs I'd done with him because it was the story of Oppenheimer's life. And then when he eventually gave me the script, it was written in the first person, which I'd never read before. And so I kind of...
The script is written in the first person?
Yes.
Like the big print would be like, I'm going to put the cup down and move towards the door.
Exactly.
That's
which I'd never read before. And so it was very clear that he wanted it to be truly subjective storytelling, and that did add to the response, the feeling of like, oh fuck, this is a big biggie. But then I knew as well that he was going to people it with all these extraordinary actors, and the thing about all those roles is they're all characters of significant consequence. They're very consequential characters in history and in the movie. We put all these extraordinary actors in the it was bonkers every time he would tell me, Gary Oldman's going to pop in, and we got Downey to play Straws, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is that you felt very, very supported and secure in that, because you knew
you share the burden a little bit with
completely,
cast.
It felt lovely, and I think I've developed a short time with Chris over the years. Like we do understand each other. I think we share a similar kind of taste or approach to storytelling. He's a master. He's a master filmmaker.
Why do you love working with him, and why do you think he loves working with you?
You'll have to ask
I know
him
you're
the
going to have
second
to, you're going to be really humble and be like, I don't know, why does he like me? I can't understand. But
I don't know. I mean,
take a guess.
With Chris, you see, it's just the work. Like he's not interested in anything else other than the work and the filmmaking, and he is incredibly focused and it's incredibly rigorous.
Is it true he wears a suit every day to set?
He does wear a very similar attire every day. But the reason I think that is, I think it makes sense to me, is that it's as a director, you have so many decisions.
Greta wore a boiler suit every day.
Every day.
She had 5, a different one for every day of the week. She was like, it's one piece of clothing. It's got pockets so I can put my notebook and pens and all that. And she was like, it's a decision I don't have to make, and I have to make 1,000 today.
You take that off the board. Yeah.
And then while we were shooting, I went to the Churchill War Museum and saw that Winston Churchill did the same thing. He had like this boiler suit, and I was like, Greta.
It makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it makes total sense.
And I imagine if she wore something different on set, it would freak you out. I mean, if
totally.
Chris came in a, I don't know,
Hawaiian shirt.
it would freak me out. I wouldn't be able to concentrate, and I don't think the crew would.
Yeah.
So I think it's a sensible choice, actually.
And prepping for the role, what's your prep process like?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'll take as much as I can get.
Yeah.
With this one, it was 6 months from when he called me to when we started shooting, and I would have taken another 6 months if I could have got it.
When he called you and said movie about Oppenheimer, were you like, gotcha, or were you like, I should read the book. I know nothing about it.
I knew kind of very basic Wikipedia
Mm.
level. No, I knew about the Trinity tests, and I knew about the Manhattan Project, and then obviously what happened in the second in 45. But like I didn't know what happened afterwards or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So you read a lot to prep. What else do you do?
like walk around my basement talking to myself.
Really? Do you
Yeah,
record yourself?
I do sometimes. Do you?
No, only if I'm doing dialect stuff.
Yeah.
But I prep like a psychopath as well.
Yeah, it's the only way, isn't
Like,
it?
I'll prep as long as I possibly can. I remember I started prepping one role and then COVID happened. And so I ended up prepping the one role for like a year. And I was like losing my mind by the end of it. My husband walked in and I was like making like weird masks and stuff. And I was like covered in paint. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I think I've gone too far with this character. We need this to end. I need to get on set."
It's the only way, though. I think this is the only.
Because then I can walk on set and just be like totally free.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't prepped, like I'd be so terrified. Like when I hear some other actors, I like look at their script and there's nothing written on it. I'm like, I'd be so terrified if I didn't have like a bazillion notes and thoughts.
Yeah.
Then I'd be having all those thoughts on set as opposed to just like.
Exactly. And I think, when you get on set, time is your most important commodity, as you know, and the last thing you want to be doing is
Finding it.
figuring it out.
No.
You got every second counts, so you want to do all the figuring out before and then park it,
Yeah.
And Chris is the king of prep, and I don't know if Greta's the same, but he has like crew that he works with forever and HODs that he's worked with forever, so they know how he works, and he preps with those guys for a long time. And so when we come on set, it's like it's fast.
Like go time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, really fast. And he just kind of expects excellence from everyone.
I love that.
Yeah, which I think all the best ones do.
Yeah.
And I think everyone gets that. It's an unspoken thing, right?
I thought if I could find a way to combine physics and New Mexico, my life would be perfect.
And tell me about casting your movie then. What was your kind of goal or plan to when you were casting it then? What was your...
I mean, most people's names were written into the script.
Oh,
like,
really?
Like I was Barbie Margot and it said Ken Ryan Gosling. Like
Wow.
everyone, Greta kind of manifested the cast she got. Also, everyone was so keen to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people signed on to do like a long movie where they've got a pretty small role. And
Yeah.
agents were like, why would we let our client be busy for this long and for this much screen time? But, their clients would be like, no, I want to do it. I want to work with these people and I want to work with Greta. And we just said from the start, like, let's make a massive dance party, invite everyone. And it was like that on set. Like, it was so fun. Every day was so fun. And we'd be playing music and we would dance in the morning. Like, the crew, cast, everyone would like dance in the morning.
Really?
Just to like get everyone. It was so funny because we were shooting at Leavesden. Other films like the Fast movie, like Fast 10 or whatever, they'd like come over and they're like SWAT gear kind of be like, what's going on in here? And we're like, it's Barbie Land, come in. And
Wow.
People were just like gravitating towards the set because they and people, our actors, everyone would come in on days that they weren't even working
Just to hang out.
just to hang because it was so fun. Like you just wanted to be there with everyone, and it was such a good group. Like
I think you can kind of feel that in the movie. I do think that stuff transfers.
definitely,
Yeah.
and I think it all trickles down from the top. Like whatever
Yeah.
mood the director sets,
Yeah.
it's like it seeps into everything. And Greta just sets like the most like joyful space.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak to her other sets. I wasn't on them, but I mean, she's so joyful and supportive and exciting, and she's just brilliant, and you can feel that. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I always think of it like it's like when little kids can sense that their parents are like angry or frustrated, even if like a parent's like, I'm fine, but they're slamming the dishes. Like a kid's going to be like a little bit like on edge, even if they don't understand it. They're like,
Yeah.
that happens on a film set. Like I've seen that happen where you can just feel everyone tensing because your director or someone else in a position of importance is giving that vibe, and everyone's suddenly like a little apprehensive, and that's
Yeah.
and we just did not need that
Yeah.
vibe.
It has
for
to come from
Barbie
the top,
set.
doesn't it?
maybe that would work for some movies, but that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I don't enjoy that.
It's just not funny. Though,
it can't go to work. Like, I don't know, if
Yeah.
you're going to be vulnerable, I feel like you need a place that's trusting and
Yeah.
caring.
Yeah. Going back to the prep question.
Yes.
Do you work with an acting coach or a dialect coach or like movement coach or do any of that kind of stuff? Or did you train to be an actor?
No, didn't train to be an actor. No, kind of started doing theater when I was 20.
Yeah.
And then did an awful lot of theater for like 4 years, kind of exclusively, and then started getting little parts in movies. But I did use a dialect coach on this one because the voice was so specific.
Yeah.
Now, we weren't trying to do an impression. I can't really, it's not in my wheelhouse to do impressions. I don't have that skill. And, you know, with accents, for me, it's like going to the gym for your mouth. You know what I mean? It takes a long time.
Australian mouths are like the laziest. Right? It's
Really?
literally like a gym workout.
But you guys do Americans so brilliantly, always.
So that's because we have to like build the muscles. Well, you have to like, build the muscles in your mouth to do an American accent.
Really? I just
Yeah.
thought it might be closer in tonality or kind of timbre or tonality or vowel
No,
sound.
I think we also, because we grow up watching so many American
Same
things.
in Ireland.
Australians, like between our soft palate and hard palate, we've got 1 centimeter of space. Americans have 3.
Huh.
So just an American mouth just has more space.
Oh, wow.
And then because of that, like we use our lips more and our tongues are lazy. And so when you're doing an accent, you're building that muscle and creating that space. That's why I think it would be harder to be American doing an Australian accent, because I don't know how you'd have all
Yeah.
that space and have all that muscularity in your mouth and suddenly like make it weak and
Yeah.
small. I don't know. That would be so hard. Well,
Aussies always do brilliant American, I think.
that's good. I love it when I hear that we've got a good rep.
Well, you certainly do with me.
The Irish have a great rep.
Yeah, we're not bad at it. But what I was trying to do with Oppenheimer is the very, like, no one talks like it anymore. You know, kind of, that
Yeah.
oldie, like Orson Welles or like Mr. Rogers or like, who else talked like that? Anyway, you don't hear it
I mean,
anymore.
it wasn't even that many decades ago that
No.
people really did speak like that. And every time I'm researching an accent, I'm like, surely it wasn't that, exaggerated. And
Yeah.
you hear a recording, and you're like, no,
It
really-
was.
Wow, we really have gotten so lazy.
We really have. And I think it's become so kind of homogenized because
Yeah,
of this connectivity in the world. People
Yeah.
sound quite similar
yeah.
in different parts of the world, don't they?
Did you have access to a lot of, archival footage in order to replicate the mannerisms or physicality of Oppenheimer?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff online, like just on YouTube.
Mm.
The
God, I love YouTube.
love a bit of YouTube.
It's like my biggest tool for
You
any
just-
character.
Disappear down there, can't
Yeah.
you? The problem with footage of him was mostly him giving lectures, so it's quite performative. It wasn't.
The real him.
So I used that a little bit, but we had to kind of imagine how he would be, with his wife or with his colleagues and stuff like that. That we had to kind of make up.
Did you have like a thing that would get you into him? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I do. Physically, there was loads of pictures of him, and he always stood with his hand on his hip. And you see all these pictures because he was such a slight man, but he always stood with this very kind of jaunty angle with his hand on his hip. So I nicked that pretty quick early as a sort of a physical thing. And then Chris Nolan kept sending me pictures of David Bowie, like in this sort of thin white Duke era
yeah.
with the big
I see
voluminous
that.
trousers. Yeah. man.
Wow.
So we kind of stole that a little bit.
Chances are near zero. Near zero. What do you want from theory alone? Zero.
And how about you? What was your process then? Because it's such a difficult character it's this kind of 20th century iconic, not a real person.
Yeah.
How did you figure it out?
So weird prepping Barbie as a character. Because it was like all my usual tools didn't apply for this
Yeah.
character. So I usually I have the things that I do, and I work with an acting coach, and I work with a dialect coach, and I work with a movement coach, and I read everything and I watch all the things. And when it's a real life person or whatever, it's
Yeah.
the things that you were talking about. If it's a made up person, whatever, I rely on animal work a lot. And I was, maybe like 45 minutes into pretending to be a flamingo or whatever, and I was suddenly like, it's not working. The animal isn't helping me with Barbie. I was like, oh God, I don't know how to find her. And it was like, normally I do a couple, I have a a couple of things I normally do. I'm like,
Okay.
so I make up childhood memories. So I think of like, say half a dozen core childhood memories,
Uh-huh.
and that helps me explain why they do the things they do in the script.
Right.
So like, this is the first time they were extremely humiliated in a public setting, or this is the first time they felt betrayed, or like whatever. But I couldn't do that for her because she just was invented out of a vacuum and lived in a, so all the things I normally didn't work. The animal work didn't work. The childhood memories didn't work. Even the accent wasn't something to cling on to. Normally I'm like, okay, what accent are we doing? So they grew up there and what time and da-da-da. And even that, it was like, no, I should be from nowhere, but kind of general, but, so I was really struggling. It was like she was so smooth and shiny. I had like nothing to grab onto. And I was like, I don't know where you are, even though she was written beautifully in the script. Anyways, I went to Greta and I was like, help me. I don't know where to start with this character. And I was like, she was like, okay, what are you scared of? And I was like, I don't want her to seem dumb and ditzy, but she's also not meant to know anything. She's meant to be completely naive and ignorant. And Greta found this episode on This American Life, a podcast, where it was a woman who doesn't or can't introspect, like doesn't have the voice in her head.
Oh, wow.
That's like constantly narrating life the way we all do. And so that was like an instance where I was like, oh, so she doesn't have that voice. And this woman's like, got a PhD and is extremely smart, but just doesn't have that internal monologue.
Is she happy?
Yeah, totally. And
is she happier, do you think?
God, I wondered about that. When the interviewer was asking her, like, so if you're like looking out a window, she's like, I'm just looking out a window. She's like, it didn't even occur to me that I didn't introspect until one day I suddenly realized as a grown woman that my parents were one day going to die. And she was like inconsolable, thinking that. And her boyfriend was like, what's wrong? She's like, my parents are going to die one day. And he was like, had you not thought about that before? She was like, no. She kind of thinks exactly what's in front of her, like a spotlight to what exactly is in front of her at the time.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So things like that, I was like, wow. And then Greta's like, references for, okay, I want the cadence of your speech to be like, we did this thing called movie church. So every Sunday morning we would invite all the cast and crew, whoever wanted to come to the Notting Hill Electric Cinema, which is such a good cinema, and watch a movie that was somehow related to Barbie.
Like what, for example?
So like, for example, we'd watch His Girl Friday because Greta would be like, I want all the Barbies at the dance party to have that rhythm, like when they speak, like it should be like da, 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 da. And it's funny, Greta sometimes I think she uses this to find the comedy in scenes too. She doesn't look at the monitor, like she closes her eyes and she just listens to a scene.
Yeah.
She's really tuned into like the rhythm, which is really interesting. But then there might be a reference like we'd watch The Red Shoes because we were coming up with the LUT for the camera, like the color chart, the IB Tech, we called it Techno Barbie because we wanted it to look like that kind of like really poppy, saturated 50s soundstage musical. Or we'd watch 2001 Space Odyssey because there's a reference. Gosh, we watched so many movies.
What a nice thing to do.
It was the best. It was so fun. Coming up with the character was weirdly difficult, and I wouldn't think playing a Barbie would be difficult, but then I realized I had nothing to grab onto, and it did take me a second. But I did know, and it was evident in the script, that I wanted there to be an evolution between how she is at the beginning and who she is at the end. And at the beginning, she is a doll and she doesn't introspect and she's never experienced something like shame and she's never experienced, there's so many things she hasn't ever experienced. And so she's certain. She says everything with absolute certainty and she moves with absolute certainty. She's wide and open to the world because why wouldn't you be? There's nothing bad. There's no pain. There's nothing bad. She can say happily to Ken, like, you can go now. I don't want you here. Like, I want to see my friends. It's my house, not yours. Night. Like, and it can be like that. And then towards the middle, it starts getting shaky and wobbly and fragile and vulnerable. And by the end, she is human. She's become human before she's even realized to ask for that. And so we did a couple things, wigs got smaller, less hair, more realistic. Costumes got less structured, geometric patterns or dots or whatever turned into like florals or pastels, less certain colors, less certainty really to mirror like what that evolution of life would be.
Very subtly, subliminally.
Yeah. By the end, I wanted people to kind of weirdly be thinking like, oh, I feel like I'm just watching Margo weirdly, as opposed to like the character I thought I saw at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it had that effect, but that's what we were trying to accomplish. And then weirdly, I was kind of playing my mom a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. Because my mom is so pure. Like she's so, I don't know. Maybe you'll meet her one day. It'll make sense. But it was funny one day on set. I was like a little bit conscious that I was doing that, but one day on set, my mom was visiting and Greta like turned to me. She's like, oh my God, you're playing your mom, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And what does she think of the movie?
She loved it. Yeah. Do you know what though? Afterwards, I was like, did you like that? Did you like that line where Ruth says, us mothers stand still so that our daughters can see how far they've gone? I was like, did that make you cry? And she was like, no. And I was like, oh, really? She was like, I thought it was a very well-written line though. I was like, oh, I'm so angry that didn't make me. What did your parents think of Oppenheimer?
Oh.
Do they like praise you or try to keep you down to earth and like do that thing that your family does where they're like keeping your feet on the ground?
They are very proud, by it all. I really wanted them to see it, like with an audience in the cinema. I think they saw it in Paris, and they were the movie's a little overwhelming,
Do you know how I saw it?
No.
I was in a cinema and it was a really hot day in London and the AC stopped working.
Oh no. Oh no.
It was almost like we're having a 4D experience.
It was like Chris designed it.
Because it was like literally like getting hotter and hotter and they're building the bomb. And by the time the bomb was going off, I was like literally dripping with sweat with everyone else in here. It was so hot.
Excellent.
I'm so proud. So proud of what you have accomplished.
We should talk about the costumes. So you're clearly still not sick pink then.
No, I'm not. I'm not done with pink yet. Yeah, the costumes were incredible. I mean, pink, you just can't have a Barbie movie without the color pink. And everyone really got on board with that. Like, I'd make on Wednesdays we wear pink day.
Really?
Do you know that reference from Mean Girls?
I had forgotten that reference.
On Wednesdays, they wear pink.
Okay.
And so if you didn't wear pink on set, you got a fine and then I'd donate it to charity. And honestly, people leaned in. Like, I was like, you can wear pink socks, that's enough. And people were like, no, I'm happy to like, It's always like the guys I feel like that are like, oh, finally I have permission to wear pink and get dressed up.
Every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday.
How long did you shoot for?
Quite a long time.
Okay.
How many days was it in the end?
That's a lot of...
I mean, it was at least 5 months.
It's a lot of pink additions to...
I have so much pink in my wardrobe now.
Sure
I wasn't really a pink girl before, but, leaning into it. But the costumes were amazing, and there were so many. Like Jacqueline Duran, who Greta worked with before, is extraordinary, and her references, there was meant to be a bit of an evolution through the decades as well, like starting in the 50s when Barbie was created, and then it kind of morphed into 60s and 70s, 80s. Yeah. By the time we're on the boardwalk, we're wearing like neon, kind of like 80s, 90s, and then gets a bit early noughties and then modern day. So yeah, it was clever and it was fun, and everyone would just squeal every day we'd get to set and see what each other are wearing and be like, ah, you look amazing. And like I said, I think the guys, like our Kens, loved it more than anything.
They really seemed to get into it.
It would get crazier and crazier until Ryan would be like, I think I need a mink and I need it would just get insane.
You actually built the sets.
Yeah.
For real, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. We built that whole cul-de-sac. The dream houses are like several stories high. Everything's like hand-painted, all the backdrops hand-painted. We made all of Barbie Land in miniature, filmed the miniatures. Everything was very tactile, and the transportation sequence, all that. It's like practical and like a diorama, and there's like, literally people like holding a rod with a butterfly dangling off it. And, everything was just the handmade quality of it was so intrinsic to the movie anyway, because it's meant to be a toyetic world. It's meant to be toys, and you should feel like you could reach in and grab it all.
But it does make a difference, I think. I mean, I don't know if the audience knows on a kind of a
Yeah.
conscious level.
Yeah.
But I really believe that they experience on a subliminal level that
I
this
agree.
is happening in camera.
I agree. And I know Chris Nolan definitely lives by the same rules of like everything's
Totally.
in camera, everything's practical. And I think what CGI can do, what VFX can do is like incredible. And as a tool
Yeah.
to complement
Yes.
work, it's amazing. But when it's relied on too heavily, there's
Yeah.
something about that like infinite
Yeah.
quality to like looking at something that's just like could go on forever where you, I don't know, I find I get detached. I'm kind of like something in me can sense that it's not real. And so I don't really care. I don't really care if that thing explodes or that building falls down because it's not real. Like you just know when it's not real.
Yeah, I think we do now. I think
Hmm.
definitely we're kind of inured to it at this stage. On Oppenheimer, there was no set bills. It was all real locations. Every single location was the actual place. A lot of it was like Oppenheimer's house, where we shot in New Mexico, was actually where he
Really?
lived. Yeah, with Kitty.
Oh,
So
wow.
when myself and Emily were filming in there, you know,
How good's Emily?
she is
I
astonishing.
love her
in the
so
movie.
much.
I think there's just like she can do anything. Emily, it's kind of
I would watch her in anything. I don't need I don't need a log line. I don't need a title. If I see she's in it, I'm like, I'm in. I'm
she
gonna
is
love it. She's so charming.
mind blowing.
But yeah, so you shot in New Mexico. Where else?
Yeah, and I think you can feel the kind of, this sounds kind of like cliche or hokey or something, but I feel like you can feel the vibrations in the room. I feel like they transfer to the character. I feel like we then have an extra level of connection or respect for the environment or for the characters, particularly if they're real life characters that actually live there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we shot in Oppenheimer's office in Princeton, which was right next to Einstein's office in the real location. And there was many of those instances where you feel you kind of, you know, it's goosebumps, you know? Like I'm not a superstitious person or anything like that, but
No, you feel the vibes.
you feel it.
Yeah.
Chris wanted that.
Yeah.
And for example, the last sequence in the movie, you know, well, they flash backwards and forwards to it, but you know, the whole big hearing at the end, that was in this horrible, shitty, little bureaucratic, tiny room somewhere outside of LA. And and it was really hot, and we were all of us stuffed into this room.
Yeah.
This huge IMAX camera. You know, we could have easily built that in a big stage and pulled away the walls. But Chris wanted it to feel like claustrophobic,
Yeah.
you know, sort of awful feeling that you would have had in one of those rooms. And they deliberately wanted to put him in a room like that to make him feel like he was worthless and that it was kind of meaningless and to demean him.
Wow.
And it worked. Yeah.
Can I ask something off topic?
Sure.
In my opinion, there are two kinds of people in this world. There are the people who are obsessed with Peaky Blinders, and then there's the people who haven't seen Peaky Blinders.
Right.
I obviously sit in the first category. So can we please talk about Tommy fucking Shelby just for like 1 minute?
Sure, if you like, yeah.
What was it like?
Oh,
I mean, that was years and years of your life.
yeah, it's like 10. That was also 10-year adventure. We started shooting that at the end of 2012.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
I love the song that plays at the very end of the last season.
Oh, yeah.
All the Tired Horses.
Yeah, Lisa O'Neill.
I love that song so much.
Yeah.
It's on my cry playlist. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
like
very-
cry on set.
It was a Dylan song and she took it and just like,
It's so good.
yeah,
Love it.
she's special.
Is there going to be a spin-off movie?
I mean, I'm open to the idea. You know,
Really?
I've always thought that if there's more story to tell.
Of course there's more story to tell.
Well, we'll see. I
You
mean,
rode off on a horse. Like, what now?
who knows? I
Please
guess.
do it. Please.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I mean, I'm totally open to the idea, but you know, I also do think it was a kind of perfect
I know.
6 seasons,
I know.
and we
You
managed.
don't want to wreck it. No.
Well, it's kind of sometimes hard to kind of move into the film format, and I do like the ambiguity of the ending.
know.
But I'm always open to like a great script. You know, who wouldn't be?
so
It wouldn't be.
good.
Oh,
Do
thanks for
people just come up
asking.
to you all the time
But a lot, yeah, a lot.
and say, Tommy fucking Shelby?
They do, yeah.
And have you lost a lung smoking all those cigarettes?
It wasn't great, but then of course I did Oppenheimer, and it's like a pipe and a
I
and
literally
fags.
thought that I was watching it. I was like, We need to get him to a doctor.
Yeah.
He's smoked so many cigarettes on
The thing
screen.
about those,
The herbals.
now they have a warning on the herbals as well.
Do they?
Yes, you can't win,
Shit.
you know. So if people shout at me, Tommy Shelby, is it inevitable that people, I would imagine they shout at you, but they might go, hey Barbie or whatever. Is that what happens?
A lot of hi Barbies.
Yeah.
A lot of, yeah. It's funny because the waving thing wasn't that big of a thing. And then on set, it just got bigger and more ridiculous to the
it kinda
point where it
grew.
was like, the waving was like so, something about Barbie, like she needs to be so earnest that she's almost a dork. But she's like, but you're kind of like, no, but I still like you.
Yeah.
And somehow waving really like, really just summed that up. And so we just kept doing it and doing it. And then Greta really made a meal out of the hi Ken, hi Ken, hi, you know, that whole bit. And then hi Alan. And yeah, now people on the street say hi Barbie a lot.
Probably.
I
for
like
the
it. I'd rather
rest.
people be shouting that at me than other things. So
This is true
I'll take it
for the rest of your life.
for the rest of my life.
And tell me, speaking of that, do you feel like there's a sequel in the works? If you're asking me about a peaky movie,
You're allowed to ask that because I did ask you the thing. I same thing like you. I'm like, we put everything
Yeah.
into that movie and it's so good
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh no. And I was also so proud of the fact that it wasn't like an original, that it was an original. It wasn't a sequel
Yeah.
or a prequel or
Yeah.
a remake, which is getting rarer and rarer
Uh-huh.
these days. And your movie too is original, and that's amazing that we both got these big theatrical opportunities for original ideas.
Yeah.
That part of me almost, I'm like, oh no, if we do a Barbie too, then we just, I don't
Yeah.
know. But at the same time, I would do anything to be back on that set. And I'd do
Yeah.
anything to be on set with Greta again and Ryan again and playing Barbie again. Like playing Barbie is the best. It's just so joyful. So again, if it was,
So you're not saying.
so it's not no,
Yeah.
not no,
Yeah.
but also it would take a lot for it to be
Yeah, to live up to what you
yeah,
guys
to
did.
live up
yeah.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah.